Hello everyone, this is Jotto, and welcome to the Hearthstone Weekly Show. Now, for this week, we are going to be doing a IHEARTHU King of the Hill. It's where IHEARTHU is actually where I get a lot of my weekly topics from, mainly because looking at sort of pro matches and versus and such is mainly what I want to be talking about, and it also happens to be what they do a lot of. But when the next fight night does come out for Hearthstone, I will definitely do a couple of videos on that. That's for sure, and also any topics that anyone has any suggestions for, put it in the comment section below. I'll take it into consideration. But anyway, without further ado, let's get started, shall we? Now, this particular IHEARTHU King of the Hill, we have Alchemixt versus Kitkatz. Now, these are both players that I really haven't seen play before. It's one of the reasons why I picked this one. I've missed a couple of King of the Hill, so I had a few to pick from. But the reason I chose this one is because it's the only one out of the 3 or 4 of them that doesn't have a player that I recognize. I've heard of Alchemixt, but I've never seen him play. And I think Kitkatz has come up once or twice, but again, I've never seen him play before. So yeah, also a little thing on Kitkatz, he is in fact from the same team as Admirable, if I do recall correctly. So it's interesting to see another one of that team and see how they do against some of the other well-known players. But anyway, onto the actual decks for this first game. As usual, I'm going over 3 games. They won't be in succession. I'm going to go over the 3 games with sort of the most interesting matchups, and then I'll put the full video in the description below for anyone who actually wants to watch the full thing. But anyway, so onto Alchemix's deck. We have a Hunter Rushdown deck, pretty standard. A lot of golds. You'll see that in all of his decks. Actually, he has a lot of golden cards. But anyway, so we have pretty standard 1-drop in Timberwolf for Unleash the Hounds and Leopardome and Abusive Sergeant. We have the tracking to dig, the Explosive Trap and Misdirection because they also function as burst damage, Unleash the Hounds, Acidic Swampoos to counter things like Truce Over, Iron Beak Owl to get over taunts, Starving Buzzard for draw, Eagle Horn Bow and Animal Companion because they're just so good, and Eagle Horns actually sustain damage, Deadly Shot to get over things like Ancient of War, and Leroy Jenkins, Arcane Golem, Wolf Rider to close out the game along with Kill Command. Pretty standard Hunter deck, very, very effective. As for the Rogue deck, now this is a Miracle Rogue. It's a type of Miracle Rogue, so we do have the Preparation, Shadow Step, Cold Blood, Conceal, Deadly Poison, all the really, really low cost spells. We also have Blade Flurry because it synergizes with Deadly Poison and also with the Assassin's Blade. Eviscerate, Sap for tempo play and just burst damage, along with Shivs to draw cards into, and they also combo really well with Gadget Sounds, you draw 2 cards. We also have Blood Mage Thanos and Nat Pagel for their utility, Fan of Knives for the AoE against aggro decks, and Van Cleef for sort of a win condition along with Leroy and Kajitan as the draw engine. So pretty standard decks. We've seen both these decks before, but the one I'm really looking forward to watching is the Rogue deck, because there's a big difference between people who are very, very good at piloting Miracle Rogue and people who just sort of threw the deck together and don't really know how to play it yet. Based on the fact that he's on the King of the Hill, I'm guessing he's one of the more experienced Miracle Rogue players, so I'm very, very curious to see how he plays this. As for the Hunter, a lot of it depends on things like... And I forgot to mute that one. Have I muted the other ones? I have. Okay, anyway. So the Hunter one, it depends a lot on what he draws, but the actual deck is quite consistent because the curve is so low. Something we notice about both these decks, the curve is extremely low. Okay. So, for opening hands, we have Iron Beak Owl, Wolf Rider, Kill Command, Timberwolf, and he went first, so he drew the Iron Beak Owl. It's an okay hand. The Kill Command's a bit awkward to have in your opening hand. You want it later. He does have ways around things like Nat Pagel, but his hand is kind of weak overall. He does have the Wolf Rider, but not much else. As for Kitkatz, he doesn't really have much. He has a lot of zero-cost spells, Nat Pagel, which he's going to have to coin out, but besides that he doesn't have anything. He needs to draw quite well to get this game started. Same for both players. But anyway. Now, for Alchemixt, I'm guessing he's just going to pass. You don't want to run out your Timberwolf into a coin dagger. And Nat Pagel doesn't draw. That's going to be pretty major. Probably going to see the Iron Beak Owl on this thing. Especially against a rogue. There aren't that many taunts you can get rid of. Now, we could even see a Shadow Step on this Nat Pagel to reset it. If he doesn't draw anything, and he just goes Hero Power, I would say Hero Power and then Shadow Step to Nat Pagel to reset it out of silence. He is going to go for the Shiv because he wants to draw into more cards. I think I probably would have just reset the Nat Pagel. See if you can bait a second Iron Beak Owl if he has it. Anyway, as for Alchemixt, he's probably going to throw out the Eagle Horn Bow because he does have the trap, so he can just start getting the damage in. Which is exactly what the deck wants to do. Kind of interesting that Kill Command isn't golden, but all the sort of neutrals are, which you need much higher levels to do so. So he hasn't leveled up his Hunter as much. But yeah, this is the problem with not resetting the Pagel, where he doesn't have anything to do. Because he's going to reset it now. If he could have reset it last turn, and he would have had 2 draws as opposed to 1 possible. Yeah, he's gonna get the draw now, but bit of a misplay on his part. Now, for Alchemist, his hand is getting slightly better. I think you just have to throw out the Wolf Rider here. You either throw out the Wolf Rider or you throw down an Explosive Trap and Hero Power. I think both lines are okay. Okay, we're going to see the Wolf Rider. So he's going to go ahead and deal 3 and probably 6 total when he swings back with a dagger. He's not going to attack with his weapon though because he has 2 traps in hand. Okay, so there's a couple of options here. He can conceal his Pagel and then SI7. He can also backstab it and just SI7 to the face. Yeah. I think the reason I would have gone for the conceal play instead is simply because you now have 2 conceals and don't really know what to do with them. And that's the problem. There are 2 conceals in his hand. He doesn't really have a way of using them. So I think I would have gone for the conceal as the combo starter there. It also saves your Nat Pagel for a turn. And he's going to go for the conceal now. Okay. It does feel like you're using a little bit you're using some extra resources when you didn't need to. Now as for the tracking, let's see what happens here. What's he going to pull from this tracking? Pretty good top deck actually, tracking. Essentially means that you top decked the best of your top 4 cards. So let's see what he gets. Unleash the Hounds. That's a big deal. Very big deal considering the fact he has a Timberwolf in his hand. Now, we're going to see a Misdirect or an Explosive. I think Misdirect is better here. Yeah, we're probably going to see a Misdirect come down and a Hero Power. Okay, makes sense. Not really much action he can pull off here, but it's been shown that Kitkatz has a pretty slow hand. There's the Shiv. Now, he's going to play around Misdirect here. Now, he's really hoping that this hits Nat Pagel. Really, really hoping it hits the Pagel. And he did. Okay. Lucky on his part. He should have shivved first. If he was planning on shivving, he should have shivved first. And then we're going to see a second conceal, maybe? He needs to conserve his board. He really does. I would say conceal. He just ended a turn. He really needs to conserve his board. That Nat Pagel is literally his only way into this game. He needs to hit his Nat Pagel triggers, and he needs to keep that thing alive as long as possible. He's saving the conceal for a Gadgetzan, but Gadgetzan's going to be too slow in this matchup. By the time Gadgetzan conceal comes down, you're already probably on 15 or lower life, and you're just going to die. So I don't see the point in saving the conceal. Anyway, from Alchemixt, we're probably going to see Leper Gnome and Explosive Trap with Hero Power and attack. Take him down by 5. Okay, what did he attack? He just went straight for the face. Yeah, I thought so. He's debating the Unleash. I wouldn't go for the Unleash here. You want to save that for later. I think explosive is probably the best line. Just weaken his opponent's board as much as possible. Also keeps his bow active. Keeping the bow active is quite important. Is he really going to go for the unleash? He's seriously debating it. He's going for the unleash. I'm not sure I agree with this. He's going for direct damage with it. Okay. This Fan of Knives is going to be ridiculous. Although he is taking a lot of damage, but this Fan of Knives, and there's the Cold Blood as well. He can just Fan of Knives, or... yeah, he should fan, he shouldn't Blade Flurry. He should fan. Fan of Knives, see what he draws, and then Cold Blood. And then suddenly he deals a bunch. I would even put the Cold Blood in the Pagel, probably. Fan of Knives is definitely the play. And then probably Cold Blood into Conceal. I imagine he's going to Cold Blood the Pagel and then Conceal at end of turn. He's attacking for 7, and then he should probably just Conceal. Now, his opponent has, if he top decks a beast, he has 5, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. If Alchemixt top decks a beast, he wins. If he doesn't top deck a beast, he can lose. I would throw out the Blood Mage here. I think I would just throw down the Blood Mage or the Conceal, one of the two. I think probably the Blood Mage actually. Force your opponent to do something, because what he could do is top deck. Actually, what could he top deck at this point? Deadly Poison, I guess? Deadly Poison do it? No, he'd still die to Explosive. I don't think he can win if Alchemixt top decks a beast. Wow. Actually, yeah, he could have if Pagel triggered and he got 2 Eviscerates. He needed those spells. And that's the win. But yeah, he has lethal now, I do believe. 1, 2, 3, 8, 9, 10, 11. Yeah, he has lethal now, but it was still a mistake. He shouldn't have thrown out the preparation or anything, because if he hadn't done that, he would throw down Auctioneer, preparation, draw. If it's he could draw an Eviscerate, for example, and then just go Auctioneer, preparation, draw. If he drew a second Eviscerate, and then using the one he drew for the turn, Eviscerate again, and he would have actually won the game. But it's redundant because his opponent did draw a Beast Outlet, but it's still something to keep in mind. So you can't be too flashy with your spell usage when it comes to Miracle Rogue. And I think that's more to do with experience with the deck. The Miracle Rogue is possibly the hardest deck in the format to play. It is one of the most interesting decks in the format, and also one of the highest skill caps, because it depends a lot on how well you estimate your opponent's damage and how well you estimate your need to keep certain spells. Because you can throw your entire hand out by turn 4 with playing Miracle. You really can. I mean, the only things you can't play by turn 4 are Gadgets and Auctioneers and Assassin's Blades, basically. The rest of the deck, preparation, spells, just throw them out, throw them out, throw them out. You can use your entire hand by turn 4, basically. But you need to know how to use the spells to their most effective, especially if you don't have a Gadget hand. If you have a Gadget hand, throw out all the spells you want. Throw out all your cheap spells, you just draw more of them, you draw and draw and draw, and most likely your opponent's going to die before you run out of spells in your deck. But if you don't have a Gadget stand, you can't do that. And sort of the way he was playing, on that last turn at least, he was sort of playing like he had a Gadget stand in his hand, as opposed to what he should have been doing, which was conserving some of those resources and using the minimum amount. So the last couple turns were a little sketchy as far as Kitkatz goes. But anyway, second game. Now this we did skip a game. It was another sort of hunter run over. Wasn't too interesting. But anyway, So onto the third game in the series, technically. Kitkatz brings in a ancient Watcher Druid, a Watcher Druid. So this particular Watcher Druid is playing a Mark of the Wild, which is an interesting addition. It saw some play actually. It made top 4. It was this really weird budget deck that managed to make top 4, which is kind of interesting. But anyway, Mark of the Wild is a one-off. That's interesting, especially with Ancient Watchers. Then we have Standard, Nat Pagal, Blood Mage Thalnos, Ancient Lores, Black Knight Cairn, things like that. Only one Defender of Argus, along with the 2 Sunfury Protectors. And besides that, it's a pretty standard Druid deck. We just have the Mark of the Wild and the singular Defender of Argus instead of 2. So it's a pretty standard Watcher Druid list. Very, very powerful deck by sort of its history and reputation. So it should be interesting to see how the Hunter deck deals with it. Traditionally, the Hunter versus Ancient Watcher Druid is about 60-40 in favor of the Druid. But it is a little coin flippy, although not as much as it is with normal beatdown, because you do have the Ancient Watchers to block. Now, the other thing that could happen in this game is if he gets a silence on an Ancient Watcher, if he's going second, he gets like a turn 2 Yeti attacking with the Ancient Watcher Innervate Keeper, then this game's going to end pretty quickly. Same with a turn 2 Yeti. Just a standard Innervate Yeti, the game's going to end pretty quickly. So if that kind of thing happens, then this game is going to be disastrous for Alchemist, but we shall see. And I think I may have left this a little too far from the game. Yep, I did. Alright, about 10 seconds. But anyway. So, yeah, it's going to depend a lot on Kitkat's opening hand. And hold your horses, Alchemixt. Anyway, Alchemixt went first again, which is quite good for the deck, actually. You want to go first unless you have multiple 1-drops. So he's had Lepronome, Animal Companion, Deadly Shot. Pretty good hand, considering he's playing against a Druid. Very good hand, in fact. He also has the Iron Becal, which would be good, but he's playing against Ancient Watcher, so it's going to be a little awkward. Kitkat's hand is bad. It has the Ancient Watcher. If he drew a Sunfury Protector on the first turn, this hand is crazy. Just because he has that turn 2 Ancient Watcher with Taunt. But the rest of his hand is really slow. Savage Roar won't do anything in this matchup. Ancient Allure won't be doing anything in this matchup until much, much later with the healing. And Druid of the Claw, unless he draws an Innervate, won't be coming down for a while. If he does draw Innervate, though, a turn 2 Druid of the Claw is crazy. Alright, so we see the Yeti. And most likely, we're going to see a turn 2 Ancient Watcher, turn 3 Yeti, I think is where he's going to come from here. He just has to end the turn. Now, Alchemix, what does he draw for the turn? Starving Buzzard. Okay, so he's just holding on to that. He doesn't want to lose it to Hero Power. Makes sense. Now, oh. Okay, he's taking out the Lepronome. He wants to stem that damage a little bit, but he's got turn 3 Yeti, turn 4 Yeti. This is going to be a really difficult thing to stop. Although, weirdly enough, Alchemix does have the answer for the first one. I mean, he's going to throw out the Animal Companion most definitely here, no matter what he draws. Yeah, Animal Companion is the strongest turn 3 in the deck. And Kitkatz is going to... Wow, these top decks are crazy. These top decks are nuts. We're going to probably see a Druid of the Claw. It's going to get Deadly Shotted, but we're going to see a Druid of the Claw most likely. These top decks are really powerful, though. This Druid of the Claw dying to this Deadly Shot is huge. Normally, this would be pretty much the end of the game because Alchemix just would not have a way of killing it, but that one of Deadly Shot really coming through here. And he's going to keep piling on the pressure, and at this point, I don't really see a way around this. I think he has to skip on the Yeti, he has to go Wrath Ancient Watcher. He can't take more damage from that Huffer. It's already done 8. He's debating it, but he has to. Yeah, he's dealing with it and then throwing out the Watcher. Now he has to hope for a Sunfury Protector, basically. If he draws a Sunfury Protector, he can get up to 2 Yetis with Taunt, effectively. So Sunfury Protector is the best draw he can have. Now, what's Alchemixt gonna get? Alright, so we're gonna see Animal Companion after Buzzard. Alright, makes sense. Misha, the perfect, the absolutely perfect draw here. We're gonna see Yeti Nap Hagel, I think. There's nothing else he can really do. I think Kitkatz is really far behind now. He had a really bad opening hand. His top decks have been pretty crazy, but the rest of his, like, his opening hand was so bad that there was just nothing he could have done. He needed an Innervate on turn 2, effectively. Are we gonna see a draw 6? Is that what we're gonna see here? I really want to see a draw 6. He's draw 7, actually, because he draws off the Buzzard. Wait a second, is he gonna draw his entire hand out? It's 4. He has to hope he draws something he can play. Really? Are we seeing the concede? Wow. I mean, that's it. Okay. Little bit of BM going on here, but what did he draw off that? He only was allowed to draw, what was it, 5 cards? So I'm gonna continue. Alright, so he drew 5 cards, and I think one of them burnt? No, one of them slightly off screen. Okay, this is the problem with popping your hand out like this. But one of them slightly off screen, but he drew Tracking, a Leroy, Kill Command. Yet the game was over. You can't lose from there. He has enough burst in his hand to kill Kitkatz, but it is a little bit of BM to actually concede in the middle of a show match. But anyway, so what was going on here? Managed to find a way to lose an unlosable matchup. Actually, Ancient Watcher Druid is not unlosable. It's about 60-40, as I said. I mean, he got pretty bad opening hands, but his draws were pretty crazy. I think what it really came down to was 2 things. Actually, the Misha wouldn't have even mattered. The Misha did not matter because he still would have drawn 3 cards, and it would have been enough to secure the game. He would have... Yeah, it would have been enough, because he would have Leroy Jenkins, Arcane Golem in his hand, and a Tracking, and then he'd just Tracking for the kill command and win. So, it didn't matter that was a Misha. If it was a Leok, it wouldn't have mattered. If it was a Leok, it would have been more powerful, because he would have got all the cards he needed, and the Leok would have dealt a ridiculous amount of damage with that Unleash, because he could even fetch for the Timber Hound here. Yeah, he could fetch for the Timber Hound using the Tracking, play the Timber, and then each Unleash, and there were 3 of them, would deal, 3 damage instead of 1? So yeah, the game was over no matter what. The second Buzzard actually didn't matter. So that was interesting. Gonna be shortest King of the Hill ever. Being destroyed by a Hunter deck. But he did in fact beat the Hunter deck. And that's the last game I'm gonna be going over. I skipped the last game. I skipped the game in between the last one we just watched and this one, because it was Hunter being run over by Murloc Warlock. It was one of the weirdest. Aggro versus aggro is not fun to watch because there aren't that many decisions being made. It's just slam cards. But yeah, so the Murloc Warlock did come out here. Now, the main reason I decided to watch this game as the last one is mainly because it's sort of a reversive role, where for the first 2 games we saw Kitkatz on the defensive, essentially, where he was trying to defend from the Hunter deck while sort of beating back, and he almost did with the Rogue. But then, now we're seeing sort of reversive roles, where we have Kitkatz on the offensive with a Murloc Warlock, and we have Alchemixt playing a slower Rogue deck, quite a slow Rogue deck actually, a very, very sort of traditionally, it's a very, very traditional Rogue mid-range deck. But anyway, let's go over this quickly. So the deck is playing 1 of Cold Blood. We have 2 Argent Squires, a Blade Flurry, a Singular Sap for big taunts, Loot Hoarder to do some more cycling with Nat Pagel and Blood Mage, Big Game Hunter to deal with Ragnaros, and only Ragnaros, by the way. They're really, you don't hit anything with big game apart from Ragnaros and cold-blooded targets, I guess. Harvest Golem shows up for early trading. SI7 is compulsory. Tinkmaster and Black Knight to deal with large taunts, and also things like Ysera in the case of Tinkmaster. Leroy to finish out. Spiteful Smith is a very underestimated 5-drop that actually works well in Rogue. It doesn't really work well in many other classes, but it works well in Rogue because you can just backstab your own guy and you get a free deadly poison essentially. And last cards in the deck we have Ragnaros, because a lot of people have been dropping Big Game Hunter. I mean, as we saw, this is the first deck we've seen out of the, what, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 decks? Yeah, first out of 5 decks with a Big Game Hunter in it. So Ragnaros is actually quite effective. And the last one is Argent Commander. This is mainly to deal things like Azure Drake and Gadget Zan, and it's just good with trading. But the main one is Azure Drake and Gadget Zan. It also helps with the Visceray to deal with things like Ragnaros. So, bit of an interesting deck. Quite a sort of traditional one. We haven't really seen this too often. There was one in the last tournament that did fairly well, but it's not too common, but the deck is pretty solid. As for the Murloc Warlock, do I really have to go over this? It's a million 1-drops with some 2-drops and a bunch of Murlocs. That's about all I have to say. And yeah, well, let's move on to this last game, shall we? Okay. Can you pause? Thank you. Alchemixt going first again. So, if you notice, there's a lot of gold in his hand at the moment. Anyway, so Alchemix's opening hand is Argent Squire, Blood Mage, Black Knight, and you do Ragnaros. That is a terrible opening hand. It's one of the worst I have ever seen. If it wasn't for the Argent Squire, this hand would be probably an auto loss. But we'll see how this goes. The Argent Squire is going to do a lot of work against a deck this heavy on 1-drops, though. So hopefully he can salvage this a little bit so we get a decent game. His top deck's going to have to be pretty good, though. Kitkatz's hand is, for lack of a better word, incredible. We have turn 1, Argent Squire with Voidwalker, which is ridiculous considering the opening Alchemixt has. He doesn't have that 2-1 to actually kill it with a dagger. And then he also has a setup for all of his Murlocs and Argent Squire to get over not Argent Squire, Abusive Sergeant to get over anything large. So this is pretty much an incredible hand, and there is the Murloc he needs. Another tribal-based one, so he wants something like a Tide Hunter. Either a Tide Hunter or a Tide Caller to get this going. Anyway, so I'm guessing we're going to see the Voidwalker Argent Squire start. Abusive Sergeant is a good surprise. I think it's better to keep it as that kind of thing as opposed to just a random 2-1 for 1. So yeah, we're going to see this. It also synergizes well with Argent Squire as long as Argent Squire is the one attacking. And I think Alchemixt just has to attack a Voidwalker and then summon a dagger and attack it again. There's not much else he can do. And he just has to hope that Kitkatz runs out of steam. That's what we're going to see. He doesn't want to run out of this Blood Mage. Definitely not into an Argent Squire or a Voidwalker. Alright, so he's not attacking with the Argent Squire. Interesting. Now, if he'd drawn that the other way around, this turn would be very different. No. I think Harvest Golem would probably be a perfect top deck right now. Tinkmaster, not so much. Tinkmaster's horrible in this matchup. If I would actually just Tinkmaster my 1-1. I think that's what it's come to. And hope for a Devilsaur. He actually got the 5-5. Now, this game, I feel like this should not be happening, but he actually has a chance now. I think we're going to see 3 1-drops of Abusive Sergeant to kill Tinkmaster and then Voidwalker Flame Imp. But that 5-5 changes a lot. It's one of the problems with Tinkmaster being in this game. There's actually been speak from some people about banning Tinkmaster in tournaments, which is a little crazy, because then it sort of differentiates the ladder from the actual tournament scene, which is not amazing. I mean, having different formats like limited, so no non-epic, non-legendary is fine, but it seems a little weird just cutting one legendary. I don't think he scores that much damage yet. We'll see in the future though. But anyway, he's debating where to send this 3-1. I think killing the Tinkmaster is probably best, because otherwise that Devil Sword is going to get a hit in, because you can just summon Dagger and then kill the Voidwalker, so he has to deal with this thing. That Voidwalker needs to block the Devil Sword hit. I mean, he doesn't want to be the aggro deck on the back foot. If this Devil Sword keeps getting hits in, he's going to start taking chunks out of his life total, and he needs to stop that. So he needs to put up this taunt wall, and then probably put Defender of Argus down next turn and kill it. He's 1 mana off this being a ridiculous turn. It's unfortunate. But yeah, this Devil Sword's going to die to this Defender of Argus, buffing the Flame Imp. I mean, we could see Murloc Tidecaller into War Leader. That's another option. And it's an okay one, but he's gonna lose most of his board if that is what he ends up doing. So I think I would play it safe and just kill this Devil Sword before it gets out of control. He's debating on trading. Yeah, I think I would. Alright, so now what we're most likely going to see, well, it depends on what he draws, obviously. Yeah, Blood Mage to trigger a combo in SI7, and then the SI7 trigger kills that 2/2. Now, at the beginning of the game, I said that Alchemixt needed some pretty good top decks, and he's had some pretty good top decks. He has some pretty good luck in general, to be honest. So I feel like this game it's not impossible anymore. I think Tidecaller into War Leader is what we're going to see here, and killing the Blood Mage. He needs to keep this board as free as possible. Alright, he's going for a Life Tap instead. Interesting. So we're going to see... He's locked himself out. He doesn't have an efficient play anymore. He may have to sacrifice this War Leader, which is terrible. Or just play Flame Imp and then pass, which is also terrible. He's locked himself out of his options a little bit here. That's why I didn't really like that play. I mean, he could always Tinkmaster his 2/2 and hope for a 5/5. But he is probably going to need that Tinkmaster for later, so I should imagine he needs to save that. Are we going to see Flame Imp here, or is he going to sacrifice his War Leader? Are we really going to see the Tinkmaster? Oh wow, that worked out perfectly. And he drew the Argent. What is it with people's luck in this game? This is ridiculous. I mean, are we just going to see the Argent Commander to kill it? He could run Argent Commander and then attack it with Hero Power and clear the board. I mean, direct damage is not a problem from 17 life when you have board advantage. So I think we're just going to see the Argent Commander into this 5/5, kill it with the dagger, and then kill the Tinkmaster, and then suddenly he's incredibly far ahead. This is, again, why I didn't like the life tap from last turn. Yeah, we're going to see the trade here. He goes down to 17 life, but he has board advantage now. And Mortal Coil is the top deck. This is incredible. Both players have top decked incredibly well this game. Are we going to see like a Soulfire off the top here? Nope, Old Murkai. 7 mana means he can go War Leader or Old Murkai next turn, which is fairly relevant. Now, he's gonna go loose on this Tidecaller with the Seer. Okay, and he's gonna play the Flame Imp. Now, the reason he did that is so that his Tidecaller is not invested. He wants to save that War Leader for next turn with Old Murkai, but he wants this Tidecaller to die to something. Are we gonna see a Defender of Argus here? Yep. And it means he gets to kill that 2/4 without losing his guy, which is pretty handy. It also means that he blocks this Old Murkai very effectively. Extremely effectively. Now, he should just kill the Tidecaller. There's no reason to leave a Tidecaller on the board. I mean, even if you don't know what your opponent has, if your opponent just went Murloc, then there's probably more in his deck. It's kind of how the deck works. I mean, as far as he knows, it's just been pure aggro. start, but then he played against the deck last game, so he does know there are lots and lots of Murlocs, and he does draw off the Pagel. Backstab, that is critical. Backstab is going to deal with that Flame Imp. Or it's just going to help deal with the War Leader, actually. I should imagine we're going to see Old Murkai come out here. This Old Murkai is going to destroy that Pagel, sort of lower down the boundaries. Now, I think that the tide is sort of changed. Yeah, he's doing the correct trades here. He needs to keep that Murloc alive. The question is, does he trade? I think you do. Yeah, I think you do. Now, the reason you do is you want to keep your Murloc War Leader alive, which in practice is not what's going to happen. Oh, jeez. One off Big Game Hunter. We're going to see a Zero Drake backstab the War Leader most likely here. That's a lot of damage gone. A ton of damage gone, actually. And then we're probably going to see Big Game Hunter come down just as a body. I mean, it is a 4-2. Don't underestimate the 4-2. Don't underestimate the golden Big Game Hunters. Double Knife Juggler. Are we going to see Knife Juggler Central? We can get 4 triggers. He could go for Knife Juggler Heaven here. How lucky are these triggers? That's what I want to know. How lucky are these triggers? Lucky enough. Okay, so now he can kill that Azure Drake for free, essentially. He should attack with Murkai first, though. Or, the question is, does he trade? I think the answer is no, because your opponent might just draw, like, Fan of Knives with Spell Power. So, yeah, you need to clear the board. This all depends on this last top deck, whether or not he wins or loses the game. It's SI7. That's pretty powerful, I'm not gonna lie. That is extremely powerful. I think we're gonna see trades with one Knife Juggler. The old Murkai looks dangerous, but to be honest, I mean, the most it can deal next turn is 4 if your opponent draws perfectly. The Jugglers, though, will probably deal 5 each. Unless he draws like another War Leader, which is quite unlikely, so I would just kill both Knife Jugglers. That's where most of the damage is going to be. This is one of the swingiest games I've ever seen. Soulfire, does he have lethal? 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. He does not. He doesn't have the Murlocs either. I think he's going to have to Soulfire this 3-3. But then he wants to save damage. So he definitely has to run out the Urgent Squire. But does he Soulfire the 3-3? I don't think he does. I think he has to save and hope he draws like another Soulfire. But then if he draws another Soulfire, if he plans on going for the Soulfire kill, he should throw out the Soulfire straight to the face at this point. Because his opponent's going to play the same way at 4 life as he is at 8. You're both striking range. So, yeah, he needs to throw the Soulfire at his face right now. Because if he draws a second Soulfire, then he has to life tap and hope that his first Soulfire does not discard his second one. So he definitely has to use the Soulfire straight on Alchemixt here. If he plans on going that way, which I think he would, he has to go for it. He's even looking at the number of cards in the deck just to check. We're down to 12, so the chance of him drawing a second Soulfire is not high, but it's definitely possible at this stage. Definitely possible. So he does not want 2 Soulfires in his hand. I would just Soulfire the face. He's going to end his turn. If he draws a second Soulfire and loses because of that, then it's going to be a mess. Is there any way out of this? I think he has to throw down the rag here. What, does he just have lethal? 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. He just has lethal. Perfect lethal. I completely missed that. Perfect lethal. He's probably calculating that while his opponent was dawdling around. That was a really interesting game. Really interesting game. And that was the last game of the series, actually. Yeah, I completely missed lethal. I own up to that. But anyway, he should have definitely soul fired the face at the end there. He ran the risk of drawing the second one and then losing the game from not having enough first, so he should have definitely soul fired the face. Or just soul fired the 3-3. I think I would have soul fired the 3-3 because I'm a safer player. And he wouldn't have died there. So that would have been different. But yeah, he wouldn't have died there, but he couldn't have known that. But I would have soul fired the 3-3 just because I'm a safer player. But if he was gonna go for the plan of killing Alchemixt out of nowhere, he should have just soul fired the face straight away in case he drew the second one. But anyway, so the 3 games from what we actually saw of Alchemixt and Kitkatz, I think Alchemixt played fairly well. He played fairly well. He made mostly correct decisions. Very, very promising player from what I've seen. I have heard about him before. I just never seen him play, as I said at the beginning. And he seemed like he really knew what he was doing with his 3 decks. He really did pick the correct decks. I mean, 2 decks. He only played 2. The Hunter one and the Rogue one at the end. He seemed to really know what he was doing. He seemed to know that when to go for it, when to sort of set up damage, what minions to play at the correct times, what spells to run out, which is something you only get from experience. So it really does show that he's been playing these kinds of decks extensively for the last couple of weeks and knows what he's doing with them. And that's why he won, I think. That is why he won. It's down to experience and sort of familiarity with the deck, which is a topic I actually did a couple of weeks ago with Reels. But his challenger in this case, Kitkatz, I think he was promising as far as deck creation goes. I mean, he was running pretty similar decks to what I've done well in tournaments, but with a couple of separate tech cards, and it just felt as if he didn't really have time to get familiarized with his own decks. It was kind of weird. We had the weird thing with the Rogue deck at the beginning where there was a lot of misplays, and as I said, Rogue Miracle is a very difficult deck to pilot and depends a lot on experience. You can't just randomly pick it up and play. It depends a lot on experience and play testing, and it really did show. It really did show that he hadn't played as much with the deck as he should have before taking it to an event like this. But I do think that he did show a lot of promise though, so I think in future Kitkatz is definitely a name to look out for, because he did play fairly well. Just any mistakes he made were based on familiarity as opposed to how good he was at the game. The last play as well with the Soulfire was something else, where you should have just Soulfired the face there, because if you draw a second one you lose. And that is something else which you only figure out if it's happened to you, basically. If it's happened to you a few times, then you realize that you have to Soulfire straight away and you can't just have 2 in your hand, otherwise they discard each other. But it does come down to familiarity, as I said. The exception was with the Druid deck. That was a bit of a messed up game in general, where Alchemixt just had answers for everything and he had sort of an almost perfect draw, but Kitkatz had a pretty bad one. It wasn't bad, it just wasn't good. It wasn't good considering what Alchemist had in his hand. If he had had many small threats, he would have done quite well there, but he didn't. He had a couple large ones and he lost because of it. He got tempoed out. So I think the series overall was kind of interesting. As I said, I'll put the link to this particular King of the Hill in the description below. But anyway, as for now, thank you all for watching. If you like the content, please subscribe. If you have any feedback or any topics for weekly shows that you want to have a look at, put it in the comment section below. But this has been Jotto, signing off.